Hi there and welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast about the reality of teaching English. I'm your host, Kelly Pennington. Thank you for joining me today. Hello there, welcome back. I am excited to be back. I had a few personal issues the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, but I am back and ready to get back to podcasting. Let's jump right in. Today's episode is discussing something that I think is important because it was something that I dealt with one of my newest clients. He was a potential client a couple weeks ago, and we were having the intake process. So we were going through that, and one part of the intake process with my clients is that I have an interview with them. I like to really kind of get to know them, where they're working, what they're doing, what's the necessity that they have for learning English, and look at what type of course they need to be taking and what type of materials we need to use. So that being said, as we were going through this interview process, this client, who was very nice, by the way, he speaks well, he's probably at an upper intermediate level. He's an executive for a company, a little bit of his profile, and he needs a little bit more practice in speaking because he has some troubles constructing when under time pressure. So that's kind of where we were at, and we were discussing all of these issues that he's having and how to make him more comfortable doing the functions of his job. While we were having this discussion, I was asking him about previous learning and what he had done in terms of courses and what he liked and what he didn't like, what was effective for him. And he mentioned that he was going to be going to London for a month to do a business English intensive course. And I thought that was a great initiative. He had the means to be able to do that, so why not? And as we were having this discussion, I kind of wanted to know why he chose London. He's a Brazilian. Obviously, his first language is Brazilian Portuguese. His pronunciation, obviously, he has a Brazilian accent. But he also was speaking more akin to American English than to received pronunciation. So I wasn't really sure what the decision-making process was there in deciding to go to London. So I investigated a little bit more, and it's fine. I think going to London is a great opportunity, but I tried to understand what was his rationale for going for this 1 month intensive business English course. And it turns out that he was dealing with a headhunter, and the headhunter told him when he had mentioned, he explained to the headhunter that he wanted to go to the U.S. It was his first choice to go to the U.S. and either do a language course or some sort of business course there for a month, just to kind of accelerate, to be kind of immersed in the language. He felt that it would make him feel more comfortable, especially with communication. And the headhunter stated that it would be better if he went to London because British English is more formal, and you use formal English in business. As a teacher, I just cringed. I was like, okay. I didn't get into it with the client because obviously he's bought and paid for the course, his tickets. This is something that's happening. I don't want him to second guess his decision. It doesn't really matter that he's decided to go to London or over the United States. That's not the issue here. Regardless of where he decides to go, if he feels that this course is going to make a difference for him, he feels that he's going to be more comfortable, then who am I to sit there and discourage a decision that he made? The only thing that would happen is that he would feel bad about it. But in my mind, I thought, okay, I need to talk about this because this is a major issue. First of all, I worked as a headhunter. After my university, I worked as a headhunter for a short period of time, and I can say confidently that in my business management course, my degree, in my training and everything that I did as a headhunter, I never once had any sort of training or education or certifications in language analysis and discourse analysis, anything like that. So this headhunter, though I don't imagine that he's not a competent professional. I imagine he probably is. However, he was very much speaking out of turn. And this is happening more and more frequently, and it's getting more and more frustrating for people in our industry as teachers that are trying to educate students according to science and according to best practices and according to literature that we've been learning. And the education area is trying to do the best that they can, and we have people like internet gurus and people who are probably very competent in their field acting as specialists, which they are not. Recently, last week, I read an article by Andre Headland, and if you haven't read this article, it's fantastic. He's talking about what to do in the age of internet gurus, pretty much, social media that has been bombarded with these people who are selling courses and things like that, and they're selling them, in my opinion, a lot of times under false pretenses because they're just looking to get rich quick. But at the same time, we have professionals in other areas that are speaking out of turn because as a headhunter, I don't believe that you have the capacity to talk about which accent is more formal. So as a teacher, it's funny because we know that formality is not based on your accent. As an American, I do think the British accent, especially like the received pronunciation, is a little bit more posh sounding. It's a little more polished. But if we look at formality, that's really determined by the expectations of your audience and your purpose in speaking. As far as I know, there's about 5 categories of formality that go from intimate to casual, formal, frozen, consultative. And from what I do know, and I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but there is, at this point, I think just one empirical measure of formality, which is the F score. It's based on the frequencies of word classes and the corpus. It looks at nouns and adjectives, etc., and the combinations and the frequency in formal and informal styles. But that is still at a word level. So to look at, in general, a text, whether it be spoken or written, you would really have to look at discourse analysis. And of course, all that register and style and everything else kind of goes into this idea of formal and informal. And as far as I know, in every course that I've taken, everything that I've read independently, accent doesn't play into formality. As far as I know, it's very much an analysis of language, not an analysis of birth. So, and I am a strong proponent of English as a lingua franca. I know that there are many world Englishes now, and that each of them have their own characteristics, and I don't think that accent is an indication of formality. That being said, I think that this professional headhunter was trying to assist my student. I think that it was in a genuine place of trying to help, but in my opinion, it backfired. One, the course was a little bit more expensive, so it financially was more of a burden for my student. And I'm not sure if he chose the course only because of accent or because the school provided a very good course for him. So yes, it can be very prejudicial, especially for the person receiving the advice. Moving forward, I think that this is going to be a topic that is very frustrating for teachers because we have a lot of internet gurus and people that just speak out of turn. It might be ill-willed and they might be trying to show their expertise in something that they might not be an expert in. But regardless of that, how can we combat that? In my private practice with my clients who are mainly adults, mainly business English students, I try to incorporate some explanation, not long explanations, not very technical explanations, but some explanations and justifications of the learning process for these adults. I think that adults are a little bit more engaged in their learning process and they're interested in techniques and tips and just general information on how they're learning and best practices and what they can do to maximize their time. Because we all know working professionals are busy people, so they need to be able to do as much as possible and usually in a very short amount of time. But I also I have some university students and some high school students that I do talk about their learning process and what that entails and why we're doing certain things. And I try to help them, and especially with one of my students. He's a high school level student. He's very sweet, he's very shy, and he's learning English and he's doing well, but he has a lot of difficulty in absorbing information, not only in English. So a lot of times I have to incorporate lots of like study skills for him and understand what's going on with him, especially if it's an emotional thing or if he's stressed out about his other classes and things like that. So he needs to have some information about his learning process because it helps him. It helps him not only learn English, but it also can translate into other areas. And he's doing better. He's doing much better in his regular classes, and he feels much more comfortable. And I think, in general, I think that he appreciates me taking the time to kind of explain something to him, because he has said a few times in our classes, like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Yeah, okay, now I understand. Like, I kind of get it. And it's not about the language necessarily. It's about how to do things and how to study and how to absorb this information that he's getting in our classes. So the first thing I think that we should do is definitely try to incorporate this type of idea of educating students, and them being more engaged in their learning process will definitely help them move forward and progress. It also will help them filter out some of those internet gurus and some of those people that are saying things and they don't really know what they're talking about, but they sound really professional when the person says it. I think that when you see all of the marketing and the things that are online and even dealing with other professionals, sometimes we take things at face value, and we shouldn't. We should question things, especially if you're making a financial investment. A lot of students don't know, and because they don't know, they trust whoever is the loudest or most interesting or has the best marketing materials, claiming that they're an expert. And that can be very frustrating for people. And if you're getting information from another professional, asking them to justify their position or asking them to justify what they're saying and just using simple logic and reasoning and common sense, you might be able to filter out some of the bad advice that a lot of people are getting. So I think these conversations are really important, and they can be very, very small explanations. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out thing. We have to remember they are language students. They're here to learn a language. But I think if they also learn a little bit about their learning process and they understand what's going on, instead of being passive participants, they will be active participants. And they will be the type of students that question what information is being given to them and interact with it. And it's not that we want people to question everything that we do, but they should be well informed about their process, because it is their process, it's not our process. And so we assist them in getting to where they need to go and getting to where they need to be. But at the same time, they need to be active participants in it. So I think it's probably the best of both worlds, just giving them a little bit of information, not very technical, but some justification as why we're doing the things that we're doing in class, why this methodology or technique you feel is the most appropriate for them at this moment, why you're focusing on one aspect of language or one skill more than others, etc., etc. So including those conversations in classes, I think, is important, and it gives them a little bit more ownership of what they're doing. I don't want to chastise this poor headhunter, this human resources professional. It was probably coming from a good place. He wasn't trying to trip up my student or for him to spend more money by going to London as opposed to the US. But I think also, as professionals, you need to stick to your area. The general trend now is that everyone is an expert on anything because they can find 2 or 3 YouTube videos about it and read the top Google search explanations, and then they become experts on something without really understanding the details and the nitty-gritty that goes into all of those summaries and simplifications of a much, much broader topic. So we have to be careful of that and educate and empower our students in being able to weed through those types of people and marketing ploys and perhaps disingenuous explanations or some suggestions that are really not founded in any sort of expertise, but they just sound good at the moment. So that would be my recommendation. And I would like to know, have you ever experienced this with any of your students? If so, please message me on social media. I would love to hear your story, and I would love to hear how you handled it with a potential client. Thanks so much for sitting with me today. I think that's it for this episode and my cautionary tale. And I hope it gave you an opportunity to reflect on how we can better serve our students and make them better prepared to deal with all of the information they're being bombarded with, both online and in person. That's it for me today. I hope you stay tuned for the next episode. Ready to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Real Talk and ELT Pod or at Kelly Pennington ELT and send me a message. That's it for me. Take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.